I truly do not care what someone consents to if they do not know what the ramifications may be. Hi, welcome back to whatever this is. My name is Kaysa. I'm online, and today I'm finally coming back. I took a small break because I don't know if you were here for this, you probably weren't, but I spent 15 days, around the last 15 days of October, making videos every single day, editing them and uploading them. And no one asked me to, nobody forced me to, but I completely forgot how much of a psychological drainage that would actually be for me. Almost as psychological as the current topic that we have today, to design our own type of game show. Game shows have been around for quite some time, apparently since like 1923. If I remember correctly, it said, in 1923, a daily newspaper, the Brooklyn Daily Eagle, struck on the idea with a radio show, Brooklyn Eagle Quiz on Current Events. So I guess you could say that's one of the first game shows out there. And then later on in the early stages of more game shows, you have things like Professor Quiz and Ask It Basket, simply asking audience members questions, and gave the high score $25. And $25, of which I'm assuming, late 20s, early 30s, is probably a lot of money compared to the inflation of now. Like, I'm assuming that's around $100 at the very least, or I could be completely wrong. I have no idea. Now, the main reason why I wanted to speak about game shows, first off, it's because I actually haven't seen other people talk about the shows that I watched a lot as a child and growing up with both my family and also on my own. There are a few of which I feel like only my family has ever truly seen. A few meaning two. And obviously that's not true since, they would go on for several seasons, at least one of the shows, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But the main thing is that there are just so many game shows out there. Part of me thinks that something that my generation, or the current generations now, because I'm an old Zoomer or whatever I am, I feel as though the younger generations are far less engaged with game shows that I have been able to grow up with. We don't have the same sort of engagement. A lot of course, the old game shows are still in syndication. You have Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, Steve Harvey's mustache on that one show, and probably more. And of course, there are a lot of survival games out there too, and I don't want to necessarily include survival games into this. I purely want it to be more like the game show push. Survival games are fun, they're great, like Naked and Afraid. Who wouldn't be naked and afraid in the tundra? Because I would not. I'm slightly anemic. I don't think that would work out for me.
Dude, that breeze.
Wow.
The second that I stop moving, I start getting cold.
Yep.
I get goosebumps.
Yep.
And you know how there was this one video, one episode where I'm pretty sure a bug went up somebody.
We've had since we've been here
in an area to like.
I would like that. That would make.
But the main thing is that a lot of the game shows that we are exposed to today have a lot of exaggerated themes, and the exaggerated themes is just bigger and bigger prizes, mainly the prizes of being both money and or goods. When I was growing up, it was very commonplace, and it probably is still commonplace to, let's say, walk into a mall and there's a car there that you could potentially win if you just entered your information or whatever. And that's not a game show, but that's just a good example of just how often and how frequent and how much it was just normal for people to try to win. We have things like the lottery, there's, things like gambling. All of these things are very, very obvious to people wanting to win, mainly money. It goes so far as to now, and I would consider this a phenomenon of a very large YouTuber having his own sort of game show called the Beast Games. It hasn't come out yet, but what has come out is a lot of allegations, and that's where I'll leave that there. The Beast Games is also being very much compared to Squid Games, something else Mr. Beast also emulated in one of his videos. I'm pretty sure a couple times too, but many people emulated the Squid Games because it was just a fun time. Besides the fact that the overlying theme of the Squid Games is that it's about the imbalance of power and what people will do for money. This also is repeated in another show that I was kind of watching. I started watching on Netflix. If you know from my other videos, I don't always follow through on watching shows or movies because nowadays I just don't have the time. So I'm going off of memory and probably the first half of the first episode that I saw. But it's called The 8 Show, where 8 people come together and are on a game show. And for monetary reasons, they have to make decisions as a group and individually to see, how long they can be there, as well as how much money they can earn. The reason why I bring up these type of game shows like Beast Games, The 8 Show, and the other slew of game shows that I will be bringing into the conversation is mainly because of the fact that it's like a social experiment in a lot of ways. These game shows are borderline unethical and have a lot of psychological repercussions if you don't watch out for how the games are actually coordinated, and also take into the account that these people are directly being affected by their own choices. And I think that's something else that needs to be expanded upon, because a lot of it has to do with that individual choice to see what will be worth it and what the sacrifice would be for more money or just whatever prize that they're after. So I'm going to start off a little bit light. I just want to mention a couple of game shows that I really did enjoy when I was a kid, and it just goes to show you that even for children it was both encouraged and just a large form of entertainment to watch game shows, watching other people compete in a way to earn some sort of prize, whatever that prize may be. I think it is fair to say that a lot of the people who were able to compete were either people who had a very good backstory or just were part of a team and they were just good players in the end. The first one I wanted to bring up was Legends of the Hidden Temple. This show was like, it gave me such anxiety. I'm already shaking in my child spirit trying to remember. This show, I'm not gonna lie, parts of it made me a little scared because they were just, in a temple. Things were happening, loud sounds, cobwebs and dust everywhere. As a kid, I didn't perceive or realize that was just cosmetics and put there on purpose, even though my family also used fake cobwebs for Halloween decorations. In my brain, I thought that was just real dust. They might as well have been in a real temple. But watching them compete to get all of the medals and the tokens and medallions, it's one of those 3 to actually compete as a team and win, getting whatever their reward was at the end, was heart racing for me, because of course you want your team that you might have picked at the time to win, and it's a game show by its own right. Of course there are probably, should I say, a lot more regulations to how it coordinated, so to keep the children safe while they were running around and doing all of this stuff. That's just like the first thing I wanted to put out there, as this is a game show, but we're going to start leaning a little bit more into the psychological aspects of decisions that are made. And another reason why I wanted to bring up Legends of the Hidden Temple is that this is the first time I, as a kid, was able to observe how other kids worked in high intensity moments where they had to make decisions that could either hinder them or help move them forward. Because of course I watched a lot of cartoons and not reality shows, actually a lot of just Disney shows and whatever was for kids at the time, but a lot of it is so constructed. So these game shows like Legends of the Hidden Temple let me to understand that there is a process to figuring how to get closer to your goal. Of course I took it as like, how do you win? This is fun. But as I go down my rabbit hole of the content that I watched as a kid, I think I'm starting to reveal why I'm interested in the concepts and conversations and interests that I have. The next type of game show that I wanted to get into that kind of dives a little bit deeper into that psychological aspect of making decisions and then also making sacrifices would be Silent Library. Silent Library came out in 2009 and it ran for 4 seasons, and the entire concept is that, well, you're in a library and you have to be quiet. However, you're going to have to do a lot of challenges, and those challenges will give you a monetary reward if you're able to stay quiet and complete the challenge. Of course, some of the problems of the challenge is that you could get physically hurt. A lot of it is made for you to try to make sound, so it's going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be painful. I remember a lot of mouse traps. I don't understand how the mouse traps themselves weren't something that made the sound meter go higher, but it is what it is. But the main thing about it is that you're just having fun with a group of people and you're competing for more money. Sometimes celebrities showed up.
You showed courage, but your friends lack discipline. You lose.
While holding pizza dough, the contestant must be shot with marinara sauce, mozzarella cheese, onions, and anchovies.
Yeah, buddy!
All types of fun, but the psychological aspect is still there, at least for me as a kid, because that's when I started to learn about risk and reward. How worth it is to make yourself uncomfortable to get closer and closer to the reward. And it would always escalate. Now, I love this concept though, because I would never be there. But just like everybody else, you ask yourself, could I do that? Would I do that? Is the money worth it? But as a kid, of course, I had no real concept of money. And that's an interesting thing to think about, because it's not like I didn't have a full concept of money. I didn't have a full concept of the value of money. And nowadays, I still don't think children do or even are capable of having a full conceptual value of money. However, I would say, and I think is probably accurate, given our current society, money is very much a pivotal concept overall. So I would think that given the generation that I grew up with and the generation that is now, they would be, in my opinion, the generation now would be far more likely to enhance the risk for little reward. And that's kind of my thought process. It seems as though game shows and risk are leaning into the extremes, but they're not actually fun and they're not actually worth it comparatively. And if you look back at the Mr. Beast games, their current prize pool, I think, is like $5 million, but they have like thousands of people. Thousands being, I think they started off with 2,000 and got cut down to 1,000 or something like that. But that's still a lot in terms of a cash prize. That's a very big cash prize. I don't know what other game show out there has anything higher. It's usually just up to $1 million before taxes, of course. But looking at games like Silent Library, it's still mainly just fun and the risk isn't too high. It's not necessarily a psychological mess when it comes to decisions you make. It's still just a game, but it is testing your comforts and seeing how capable you are to be able to handle yourself so you can get that prize money and also be entertaining as possible. Because I can promise you, if I was getting my fingers snapped by mouse traps, I would not be laughing. At least I don't think so. You know, that hurts. The next game show that increases the intensity of the performances that are being made is Wipeout. And of course, a lot of people, just like me, have watched Wipeout, where people were literally throwing their bodies around and potentially getting hurt, but we never really fully talked about it in regards to trying to win and compete against each other to get the main reward at the end. It's very popular, and it is not uncommon to have a athletic sort of game show, and I'm not against that. You know, we have American Ninja Warrior and probably other game shows that involve the athletic aspect. I feel as though I've watched a few. Like, I think I watched a clip of like a parkour competition.
It's Chaser one way, and look how he ducks under by the mountain, round by the front line, keeps that speed up, under the ridge, up onto the mountain and over the top, and just flings himself through the tilted cube. It looks so easy.
There's that one, I believe it is a Korean body competition. Not body, but different types of backgrounds of people with different body types. I'm so sorry, I can't remember anything. I'm going on the fly right now. Scripts. Who has time to write those? But the thing with Wipeout is that as fun as it was also the first time I saw other people who were not trained to do athletic and, you know, crazy stunts to be able to perform in such a way for money. And me as a kid, I had asthma. I wasn't super fit by any means. I obviously wasn't rich. The idea that I would have to physically do all of these things, exhaust myself, survive to the end without breaking anything, and then also compete against other people for money really just made me tired, to be honest, on their behalf. I would watch and I'm thinking, man, whew. Would you take a break or something? I don't know. The main thing is that it's not fully psychological yet. This just shows how much it can get physically demanding to be on a game show. And a lot of it is for, again, that entertainment value. And it just connecting back to things like the Squid Game. You think about how often people like them on the game show will go through such a competition, potentially harming themselves in the process. Because remember, these are just typically, as far as I remember, normal people, or just not specifically athletes at the time. Should I say that? So I don't want to say that they're not athletic. Maybe they're just not at their training peak, or maybe they did train for this. I don't know. I was not there. But there's something about this that triggers something in my head that makes me feel as though that this is also a part of the narrative of throwing your body out there to risk your life or risk damage of some sorts to be able to win money. That's the main thing. When you're an athlete, you're not trying to win money. You are literally directly paid to perform in such a way. These are people who are putting themselves in a space to have long-term damage or short-term damage and are taking time off probably from their actual jobs to compete for money, internet, and, you know, social media, television attention, just to feel like they've won something as well. There's nothing wrong with that on a small scale. On a large scale, it just seems very distasteful to me how often these type of shows exist. And these sorts of game shows, again, comparatively to like Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, Double Whammy even, those are games that's just about, you know, can you get the right answer? And can you think hard enough? Can you guess the right answer? Can you win by just the knowledge that you have, not necessarily try to compete in such a way that could be long-term damaging. Of course, I would never go on any of these shows at this point. Not the physical ones, not the psychological ones I'll talk about later, not even a regular game show, because I know I would be a deer in the headlights. And I know what that looks like because there's a lot of deer here. So I would lose, is what I'm saying. I'm not going to go on television to lose. That's just not, why would I do that? It doesn't matter if I know the answer or not. I had performance anxiety, so you will not see me there. The reason why I'm also fixating on Wipeout is because of the origin of Wipeout, or whatever inspired Wipeout, supposedly. I only had some light research, aka something I remember from someone else's YouTube video, and I don't know where to reference that, and I don't need to. Its predecessor is Takeshi's Castle and Most Extreme Elimination Challenge. Now, if I remember correctly, Takeshi's Castle was extremely extreme. So this Japanese game show was very extreme. Even on IMDb, it literally says it's a silly Japanese game show on which contestants are painfully eliminated through barely possible stunts and events, most taking place above pools of mud. And pools of mud are unpleasant, very unpleasant. But if I remember, and I may include some clips, hopefully I include some clips, a lot of the events and a lot of the challenges were just so arduous and just so impossible to complete to some extent. There were plenty of people who probably passed, but there were just so many people who couldn't pass because it was just so arduous. It was so difficult. So you can say Wipeout is just the watered down version of Takeshi's Castle, because Takeshi's Castle was meant for people who, in my opinion, had no long-term perception of what the ramifications could be of injuries. They don't have enough anxiety is what I'm trying to say. They didn't have enough anxiety. That Takeshi's Castle or for people who had zero anxiety in life. That is my full opinion. And I feel as though a lot of them probably walked away now having anxiety. So, sticking with Japanese game shows, we're now going to finally get into one of the game shows that I watched as a kid and have never heard anyone talk about ever, anywhere, at any point ever in my entire life. Don't know why. I think it was a pretty good show, but it might not have been. I was a child. So, you know, if I look back, there's probably a lot of sketchy stuff in there that I probably just... Okay, so the show that I'm talking about is I Survived a Japanese Game Show. It had 2 seasons and it came out in 2008. So in 2008, I was 10 years old. Good for me. And I watched I Survived a Japanese Game Show. And it's exactly what you may think it is. Americans fly to Japan and participate in a Japanese game show. And the main thing that I remember is that they had to live in a house together. They were on these different teams. And then when people were getting slowly eliminated, they started having different splits and everything, alliances. And I truly, truly remember there's this one man who had a skin-tight green suit. He was on the larger side. His name was Bubba. And I remember him, and I remember this one scene or event or game where they had to crawl along oiled down sumo wrestlers. That lives rent-free in my brain as a curse, honestly. The main thing is that I truly think that I only might have watched either one show or it was actually one season. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. It could have been one episode and it could have been just one day. I have no idea. I remember my dad was probably there. I think my whole family was there. Me, dad, mom, maybe a sibling. I have a couple of those. But I remember watching it. I remember that I liked Bubba because his name was Bubba. And that's about it. It was a very interesting game show. It was very silly. A lot of these Japanese game shows are very silly, if I've noticed anything. The other one, Takeshi's Castle, was known for being very silly, very humorous in the way that, you know, the games were coordinated.
Ceremonial bit over. The fun can begin. 2 grown men in nappies trying to push each other about. It's like kindergarten out here. Oh yes, he did it.
Game shows that are Japanese, I've noticed, have also been a lot of humiliation as well. So I think there's also a different sort of culture translation when it comes to game shows, where a lot of, I would think, American shows are based on either skill and ability or just try your best until you fail, right? But in a lot of Japanese game shows, I'm noticing a theme that a lot of things are built on, of course, skill too, and knowledge, but you have a lot of silliness, campiness, humiliation that comes along with the game shows. And hold on to that thought, because that's not just because I'm labeling things. There's something else I want to get into a little bit later that will illustrate my point a little bit more. Here is the one game show I know me and my family tuned in for. The real reason why I wanted to make this video and the main show that I considered to be, in my own personal life, the psychological fuckery, like I don't know how else to put it. It's this game show called Solitary. Now, I can't tell you why my entire life I thought it was called Solitaire. Like just solitaire. That it. Like I don't know why. I don't know. My whole life, like I was like Solitaire 4.0, you know. But it's solitary. And the main point is that there are 9 rooms. Each room gets one person, and they have to start working together or working against each other or thinking about what their components are doing for every single choice that they make.
Welcome to a unique social experiment designed to push 9 humans to their absolute physical, mental, and emotional breaking points.
Give me the pizza.
I wasn't even aware that the prize was only $50,000 for the things that these individuals had to go through. I think I'm not selling this correctly. There is such thing as solitary confinement. And solitary confinement is known for having negative psychological effects on people.
Locked in isolation pods and cut off from all contact, they are not competing against each other, but against themselves.
We are social creatures, and yes, socialization can lead to so many different things depending on the crowds and the situation and the context, sure. But being alone by yourself for a long period of time is a problem. Now the main thing is, of course, when it comes to solitary, they weren't just in a room by themselves the entire time, and it wasn't about people sitting there until they go crazy and press a button to leave. That's not what it is, but it's kind of close. The only person or thing that they had to communicate with at any time in any sort of social or communicative way was Val.
You are entirely alone. Except that is, for me. In solitary, I am your only companion. In solitary, I am your only friend. Let us begin.
The AI that helps to communicate with them talks to them directly, sometimes provokes them, and will present them with the different sorts of challenges and the rules that were involved.
Your objective is to remain inside the box for 3 hours, no more, no less. The catch is that you will measure the passing of time inside your own little heads.
They also had a big red button because of one day they might want to leave. So maybe the challenges were too hard, maybe being in a solitary confinement for weeks at a time was too hard, or maybe the conditions got too bad. Because mind you, they're competing. At times they competed for food that was just better versus worse. Sometimes they competed for better, bedding or clothes or whatever sort of things that they can get a tiny little bit of comfort. Sometimes they were punished. Not even sometimes. Oftentimes they were also punished, sometimes with sound or lights and things like that. And of course, prolonged sound and lights where you can't sleep, or when you're not allowed to be able to rest by any means or find any sort of peace, is crazy.
I find that depriving my guests of sleep makes them pliable. It helps me to discover their physical, mental, and emotional limitations. However, after 30 hours of this torment, I have grown concerned about the well-being of several of my guests.
The whole point, and even the show itself, considered it itself as a social experiment. It's weird that it is a game show because they do win something in a way in the end, but it feels as though $50,000 was just not enough to actually win this. When you have shows who are like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, or shows that you can win like upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars, I just feel as though $50,000 is not enough for what solitary put people through, in my opinion. maybe there's a reason why that's the number that they chose, but it really doesn't matter. And of course, there's also inflation too. So maybe I'll check out how much $50,000 would compare to now. It probably would be worth it, actually. Maybe that's the reason why I don't think it's worth it now, because I'm in my inflation mind of 2024 versus, when did this come out? 2006? 2006 to 2010. Yeah. A German version, Prosipien. And there was a Brazilian version. It's also broadcasted in Singapore. Wow, this show went pretty far. Further than I thought. It also says, in the season 3 episode, Rest in Pieces, Val's eye turns red and its voice takes a deep, sonorous, distorted tone familiar to that of Jigsaw and Saw, while giving instruction for the episode's test. Oh my god. Val was the warden who played your friend and also played your biggest enemy. Val was crazy in its own right. I didn't even realize that that was probably AI. That was my first inclination to call it AI, but I figured like, no, there's gotta be somebody just typing stuff in the back. But apparently it was a form of artificial intelligence, if I read that correctly here. So that, this is probably our future, I'm not gonna lie. If that's how artificial intelligence is gonna be used on people in solitary confinement, I mean, someone should write a book about that. Someone probably has. I think I want to watch it again. Solitary was a really good show. Social experiment, psychologically kind of crazy. It threw me for a loop as a kid. I'm not gonna lie. 10 years old or so, and I'm like 8, 9, 10, I think. 10 years old or so, and I'm watching people have to literally make decisions that are breaking them down psychologically. As a kid, I was just like, are you gonna do it? Number 9? You gonna let 7 just do that to you? 7, 8, 9, you know what I'm saying? I'm not funny.
My name is Michelle.
Incorrect.
Is it? What's my name now?
As you can see, you are in a pod with a number. That number is now your name.
Then this brings me to my last point. So, recently, there was a documentary that came out. And the documentary is called The Contestant. It's on Hulu, by the way. Apparently. I didn't even know it was a whole documentary. I actually watched somebody else make a video about this, and then I watched their video reviewing this information. So there is a Japanese game show that pretty much was unethical inherently. It is a true story of a Japanese reality TV star left naked in a room for more than a year, tasked with filling out magazine sweepstakes to earn food and clothing, prompts innumerable questions about our culture of oversharing. But I don't really think that's the question that we need to ask, because over a year he was only allowed to win for food and clothing. That truly means that he had a bunch of magazines and mail-ins, and he spent day after day after day, hour after hour, trying to win anything to help his own survival. I remember seeing a clip of him winning a bag of rice, and the man was beyond grateful for it. He couldn't even get an extra pencil without having to win it. Everything he had to do to win, he had to win through the sweepstakes. He couldn't get clothes, he couldn't get anything. They put him in a single room, locked him in there, and he had to win everything moving forward for over a year. And I cannot imagine the psychological ramifications of that. The point about the text here is about oversharing obsessed culture is what potentially have led to the reason of the making of this sort of show. And of course somebody will go on the show again for the motivation of money. And we already went over it that people will go far physically, mentally, emotionally. And I feel like this is one of those things that culminates all of them. No, this isn't a athletic event, but to be left naked and exposed in such a way for over a year to be observed by other people, and the only way you can get anything is simply to win it, is what I feel like would break me personally. Because the main thing, I already mentioned things like Naked and Afraid. And the thing with that is that they could always opt out to leave. They chose to be there, they can opt out to leave. The whole thing is that they have nature to survive on. There's also another sort of type of social experiment observation thing that I may include because it's something I learned about in college. I don't know if I'll find it or remember it, but basically a man with a lot of money put in 24/7 live cameras and which is always live. And I think he was just trying to make a point that this might be the future, that we're always going to be live. And it really ties into what this is because we're really obsessed as a society to observe and watch and speculate because we want the shock value to be able to also watch to see what happens, but also know that's something that we don't have to do. He's doing that. He's doing that voluntarily for money. Kind of. To be stripped of your ability for basic needs is far too extreme, and that is, in my opinion, unethical by the end of the day. And I mean this, if he didn't win food, if he didn't win a basic necessity, he just wouldn't be able to eat. This man lost a lot of weight having to sit there, be naked within a room, eyes on him, seeing and waiting days at a time to see if he won something. That's the main thing that's, I feel like, is sinister about this whole thing. All these days, hoping and praying that you win things. At one point, I think he won like a little TV too. So he won various just stuff. He was just filling out everything. But how often do you have these sweepstakes? Like, for example, walking into a mall and hoping to win a car, and then you don't, because who wins those things ever? But the main thing is that you're spending your entire day filling out sweepstakes. That's all you can have. That is all you have access to potentially have any sort of comfort, peace, life, basic necessities at all in this little room by yourself. By the way, he was not allowed to leave ever. What it does to you psychologically. Even though that there was at one point, he was told that he won. They got him out. He got to go do other things. And then went on the stage to essentially tell him that he won. Was brought into a fake setup room that was exactly the same as the room he had been for over a year. And the first thing he did was strip down naked and sit down at the table because he was that conditioned to comply. And he was really just thinking that maybe he was lied to. And there may have been a reason that he thought that he was lied to, by the way. I'm remembering the details loosely. But he was feeling as though he was deceived. And this is where it becomes full circle sinister that he himself became trapped within this game show. Continuously. He genuinely thought for a second he had a taste of freedom. He had been stripped of his own sense of agency and freedom at this point, thinking that the game show was still going to continue and that he was still going to have to sit there naked, be observed, and then have to go through this sweepstakes. And I think this show in particular psychologically made me to understand that compared to all the other shows, it's not exactly the same, but just how far people who watch, people who do the game shows, and people who coordinate the game shows will go to strip someone's basic human needs just to see if they'll continue. Because to some degree, the individual, and his name, Tamaki Hamatsu. I think that's how you pronounce his name. His nickname was Natsubi, who unwittingly became an extreme case study. Yeah, to say the least. Natsubi, he was an aspiring comedian and he went to go into this game show not knowing when it would actually end. As far as I can tell, the end didn't come until the producers decided it was the end for him because he was just going to keep continuing. And of course, it brought in the ratings that he was doing all these things. So people obviously wanted to keep watching. And of course, the producers wanted to keep having that viewership so they can make more money off of him overall. Which is the other sinister thing, because as this man is slowly degrading psychologically in regards to his own understanding of freedom and agency, therefore as a case study, as it's been put, extreme case study, trapping himself within this game show itself in the pursuit of some sort of win. The producers are making so much money off of this man, as he has to sit in such poor, horrible, relatively speaking, inhumane conditions for such a long time. And we could talk about, oh, he signed a contract, he wanted to do all that stuff. I truly do not care what someone consents to if they do not know what the ramifications may be. And this is what I mean. I don't think there was any precedent to give an example on what could happen to him if he did this for a prolonged time. I'm saying even if he signed a waiver, I don't think he would have actually known or actually been told. I'm assuming the waiver was pretty much, oh, if you die, you can't sue us. Like, that doesn't give any understanding of what could actually happen to you. There could be, though. I'm not saying he didn't know. I'm saying I don't think he knew what he was getting into. I don't think the producers actually knew what was going to happen. I truly think that everybody just came together and just watched what happened. I think this is one of those things that regulations were not in place, or were probably put in place after this, seeing what was going on and how long it would just be let to go on. And potentially, if nothing was put in place afterwards, there is a really good chance that someone would do this. That's the other thing. I am not saying that somebody would see this and be like, man, immediately I would never. I'm saying there are definitely people out there either desperate enough or maybe just dumb enough to say, oh, I could do that too. I mean, again, we have naked and afraid. People are fine being watched naked. This is, and doing things. That's the other, those are two separate things for me. Being naked on television is one thing. Watching me suffer while naked on television is just crazy work. You couldn't pay me. That's just not, like, I'm already naked. Now I gotta struggle? I'm already struggling mentally, bro. Watch that go into syndication. There is an entire documentary. Can you imagine? I gotta deal with this for the rest of my life. You know, people may think like, oh, you get used to it. I don't want to. There are over 8 billion people on this planet. I don't want to get used to it. Take me out. Take me out the game, coach. I'm not going to that game show. All is this to say that it is pretty crazy, the land of game shows. I know this is a how to create a game show, but this is more like my little case study to just take you along the way about the game shows that I've watched throughout time and reminisce a little bit. But the main thing that you can do to make a game show is, one, have a nice large lump sum of money that people will want. 2, make the game itself relatively safe to pass. And 3, make it, colorful at least, and definitely a competition of some sort. But if you want to get into the psychological aspect, all you really need is just a room. You put a person in the room, they can have clothes or not, and you can just watch them. Give them a way out though. Give them a nice big red button. Tell them that if they knock 3 times on the door, they can always quit. Always give them a way out. But the best game show, obviously, is to see how long someone can handle it. I feel the pain in my spirit. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down below. Did any of the things that I say entertain you? Did you watch any of the shows? Oh my god, I'm gonna have so much fun finding clips and just adding it. I don't know when I'm gonna do that. So I should probably stop adding more seconds for me to cut out is probably what I should do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end it here. I hope to see you in the next one. If there's a next one, maybe I'll never edit this. Who knows? I'm already a little tired. It's my bedtime. Sleepy times. Okay, I don't know what I'm on. All right, bye.